Hey, what's up YouTube, and welcome to the final part of my how to build a fair / carnival / theme park tutorial playlist. In this video, we are simply going to add the finishing touches to the fair. We have a few small builds to make, and we simply just have to connect all of the attractions and rides and games and stalls together, add a boundary, and also make the entrance look nice and pretty. And once we have completed all of that, we should hopefully both be left with a nice fully completed fair. And do remember that if you haven't built every single part of the fair yet, then all you have to do is check the how to build a fair playlist down below in the description, and that will show you everything that you need to make. Without any further ado, let's get started. So, before we begin the tutorial portion of this video, at this point in the fair, we should have made literally every single major build that has its very own build tutorial. This video will not necessarily be a step-by-step, block-by-block tutorial, but instead showing you where to place specific builds and different decorations around the fair and how to join everything together and make everything look good. So at this point in time, this is what hopefully all of you have for your fair, or at least something similar to it if you have decided to alter it a little bit. And once you have reached this point in your fair building, this is what we are going to do next. Make your way to the central point of your fair, and we have a few different builds to add here up the strip. So the first thing that we have to work on for the fair is going to be the center area. There is a bunch of small builds here, the first of which is going to be a cotton candy stand or a candy floss stand, depending upon where you're from. You might call it something different. This has its very own tutorial, which is why I am not going to step-by-step it for you. I will leave a link in the description for every single time this happens. So if you want to make your very own cotton candy stand for yourself, you can follow a separate tutorial along from this one and place it in your fair. It will be the first link below down in the description. So once we have made the cotton candy stand, we are going to make a couple more. The next of which is a hot dog stand, and just like with the cotton candy stand, this has its very own separate tutorial down below in the description. That will be the second link that you can find. And once you have finished with that, we can move on to our third and final stand. This is a balloon cart, and once again, you can find a separate tutorial for this down below in the description, but if you probably were able to make one of these just by kind of observing what I'm doing in this video in particular, this might be the one. It is quite a simple concept, yet very impactful. Now that we have finished making all of the carts and the stands, we are now going to focus our attention on something that's a little bit out there. Or a little bit up there, I should say. I decided to add a hot air balloon to my fair. Now, I'm not 100% certain why I actually decided to do this. It seems like a kind of a weird thing to add, and yet, it seems to sort of fit in with the entire build. So this is one of the few things in the fair that actually doesn't have its very own separate build tutorial, but you may be able to piece this together from this video. I'm not 100% sure it even fits the aesthetic of the fair. I kind of just felt like adding it. I wouldn't really think of it as a fair build exactly. It's not even a really fair themed balloon. It's just like white and blue. Maybe if it was like a giant clown's head or something, like it might make more sense. But anyway, I just decided to show you this because I have it in my fair for some reason. With those 4 builds added to the fair, I think it's time to start establishing some boundaries around the fair as well. So right up front center, we have to make the entrance. This is going to be a red concrete archway with some fake lights in the form of item frames and shulker boxes to look like different coloured light bulbs, with some lanterns hanging off of the archway as well. Really simple, and this is literally opposite the entrance to the circus. I do believe that earlier, at some point in time, we actually extended some of the entrance out towards the outer part of the grid. So if you just build the archway left and right of it, make it nice and even, you really can't go too far wrong. Now, after we have made the archway, that is the only way in and out of the fair, unless, you can find a different way. I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult. We can either dig underneath the wall or go over it. Well, or maybe take the hot air balloon. We are simply just going to put a giant wall around the fair, and that is just going to be terracotta, good old plain terracotta, stacking it 2 rows high. We're going to place it all the way around the actual fair itself, leaving a few rows out front. You'll be able to see what is left if you have made the giant white grid. You'll be able to see what you do and do not place wall on top of. With the outer boundary complete, we can now work a little bit more on the entrance to the fair. We have made the archway, which is the obvious entrance and exit into and out of the fair, but we have to make the walk up a little bit more special. So we're going to add some nice uniform trees that are evenly spaced apart and perfectly groomed on the left and right side of the main path into the fair. These are 3 oak logs stacked on top of each other. We placed leaves all the way around the top of the top log, and then we add another row of leaves directly on top of it. So it's really easy to do, but very impactful as we walk in and out. Like, it just makes it feel a little bit more refined. There are a few parts of the fair that have just large empty areas. So the front right hand corner of the fair, for example, behind the burger truck and the water slide, or the actual big inflatable slide as it's supposed to be in the swing chair. This area in particular is really big and empty, so we are just going to make it nice and foresty. Plant a bunch of oak saplings, add a bunch of bone meal, and you can't go too far wrong. With a little bit of nature added, it's now time for us to work on the fair's footpath. The footpath is incredibly important because it takes us all the way around the fair and leads us to all of the different fun attractions. There is a main ring, or a square, that goes all the way around the primary part of the fair, but there are also several paths that splinter off and take us to little different parts of the fair as well. So we have one that takes us to the ghost train, we have one that takes us to the funhouse, we have a little path that takes us off to the side to the Helter Skelter. But we also have a small path as well towards the front left hand corner of the fair that takes us around the trampoline area, the go-kart, the food truck and the dodgems. The path is primarily made just out of stone and it's about 3 rows wide all the way around the fair. The only few cases where this isn't the case is towards the funhouse, because I want it to line up with the very centre of the kiosk, and also where we have the Helter Skelter. Also, in some parts towards the front left hand corner of the fair where it kind of loops around in its own little coil, we do have to shorten it a little bit, and that's okay. So as long as the main ring of the fair is just 3 rows thick and it kind of mostly is just a square, I'm quite happy. I'm also adding some bushes and some trees as I walk around with the path, so wherever I find a little bit of dead space, wherever there is just like a bit of empty space that's like, ah, something could go there. An excellent substitute for empty space is bushes that look nice and planned, so 2x2 squares, nice and stacked next to each other, some oak trees, some bone meal, some flowers. Anywhere that you think that it's like, it's a bit boring there, let's add a bit of nature, then if you're thinking that, that's probably a great place to put some of those decorations. You could, of course, add some other things as well. We can add some hanging lights, which I'm mainly just using birch with a birch fence gate and a hanging lantern off of the end. That is a nice little decoration to add. Another bit of empty space is towards the left side of the Ferris wheel and also around the ghost train. But we are also going to add some lanterns as we have a long walk around the bottle throw area, or the ring toss game as it is. The walk up to the ghost train on the left and right side of that path I think is an excellent place to stack some leaves nice and uniformly. And around the actual ghost train itself, being the kind of like haunted sort of creepy forest that it is, I thought that some spruce trees would do really well here. If you wanted to go the extra mile and add some ghosts in the trees, or maybe even some bats, or if you wanted to add kind of like an ooze lake or an ooze pond and mushrooms and podzol and maybe some graves further around the haunted house, then you can. But I have also found that a just nice dense spruce forest will also work just really, really well. It helps to fit the atmosphere because we're not really meant to walk around the haunted house whatsoever at all, really. The front has a bunch of decorations, so it should be a little bit unnecessary. Now, around the back of the funhouse and in the back right corner, we are simply just going to go for a nice dense oak forest. That's all we're going to do. It's a bit of a giant dead zone, and I don't want to build anything else back here. I think that the fair is complete at this point. We don't really have to add too many other big builds. We are going to be adding some food trucks, but I don't think that that would be a good spot for them. So a nice dense forest and also a little bit of greenery around the Helter Skelter, I think helps to really close this area in. We are also going to refine the little pathway around the Helter Skelter with some lampposts, made in the same fashion that we have made all of the others with the birch fence gate, and also the lanterns. The walkway up to the funhouse as well, I think it's a good idea to have some planted out oak leaves in the 2x2 sort of formation, and I also want to add some birch fence with some hanging lanterns in an archway shape in front of the ghost train and also the funhouse. The ghost train set, however, I like the idea of using soul lanterns instead of regular ones, so that's just a nice way to kind of like usher people into those two paths. There's a bit of a dead space around the bouncy slide and the roller coaster, so that's getting filled in using some oak saplings. As we walk around the opposite side of that path where we have the dunk tank and some of the other stands, we have added a little bit of greenery. Once that has been complete, we have to add a central path to the center point of the fair. So just connecting all of these stands and games that we have made previously together, we are just going to grass path this area just so they all connect nicely. And we do also have to add a little bit more detail around here as well. So, for instance, now that we have kind of added this sort of like jagged grass path, we are going to place again, kind of like a little birch archway, a similar sort of thing that we did with the funhouse and the ghost train. This is just set up either side of the path with hanging lanterns just, well, hanging from the top bar of the archway, and we want to have this on both entrances of the central part of the fair. So I think that it's actually quite a decent area, like it's something that should be highlighted, the centre part of the fair. It's where we've got some of the more fun and smaller games, the hook-a-duck, the kind of like mini games where we have the high strike, we have the food carts, the balloon stand, but we also have like the bottle throw game, and we also have the pop the balloon game as well. We are going to add some picnic benches as well in kind of like some of the more emptier spaces. These are made using just pretty much attach the spruce fence, spruce slabs, and also spruce trapdoors, just stacked all next to each other and on top of each other. You can see how that has been done, and just placing a bin as well next to the picnic tables, which is just a cauldron and an oak trapdoor. Around the hook a duck game and also the ring toss game, I'm just going to add some grass path around these two particular games. I just think that that will look a little bit nicer. And not only that, we are also going to add some trees to the central area as well, as it feels a bit bare. So wherever it would make a little bit more sense, wherever there's just some big empty space, so in between, say, the balloon popping game and the back of the dunk tank, I think some trees would look good there. We are going to have to make it look as though this area has been walked a little bit, so we'll be adding some podzol and some coarse dirt, maybe even a little bit of grass path and some bone meal around these areas in particular too, just to make it look as though people are actually walking to and fro the particular stands. The same thing with the bottle game, where, and I keep referring to it, there's a ring toss, which is a ring toss game in which you toss rings onto bottles, but the stand itself is where you actually knock over the bottles, the bottle throw game, I guess we could call it. So we kind of want to make it look as though that people walk to and fro these areas. It's also this, just on the behind the high striker as we go towards the back of the fair, is also another good place for a picnic table and also a bin too. So beyond this, there's not too much more detail to add. We don't need to crowd the central area with too much greenery or too many builds. We don't need this place looking like Sherwood Forest, so I think it's a really good idea to add the final few builds to the inside of the fair, and then we can work on the outside a little bit. So all the way up in front of and to the left of the funhouse, we are going to make a hot dog truck. Simple as that. This also has its very own tutorial, which you will be able to find below in the description nice and easily. It is exactly what it says on the hot dog tin. It is a food truck that specializes in hot dogs. What could go in a fair better? Or should I say, what could fare better in a fair? With the hot dog truck made, we are adding one last build to the inside of the fair. This is placed in front of the roller coaster, moving towards the back where we have the carousel. This is a taco truck. So just as with the hot dog truck, same principle, except we have delicious tacos. This once again has its very own tutorial, which you will be able to find below in the description, and that will allow you to add this to your fair. With those final two builds added inside of the fair, it's now time for us to finish the outside of the fair and further refine the entrance. We have to add a bunch of car parking spaces. These are made using podzol. They are 6 rows long and 3 rows wide. They begin 2 rows away from the main pathway of the fair, and they are 1 row away from each other. Nice and simple, really easy to place. I would also recommend at some point in time to replace some of the podzol with coarse dirt and perhaps any sort of other block that you might want to add in there. So soul sand isn't a bad one as well, but a mixture of podzol and coarse dirt will probably do the job. Any other brown sort of block would work too, of course, so some brown terracotta, maybe even a little bit of wool, but we don't have to go too crazy with these. These are just car parking spaces. Now on the ends of the car parking spaces, right in the middle, we are going to place a sequence of wool. So we have diorite wool and we have red nether brick wool. So it doesn't matter which one you start with as long as you alternate between the two. So if we start all the way at the very end, place a wall in the center of a car parking space and then the opposite wall in the space in between the spaces and keep alternating between the two, moving all the way along until you hit the final car parking space, then you will have a nice sequence of kind of stoppers that will of course stop people if this was actually like a real car park from like just driving straight into the fair wall. And once we have added all of those walls, it's also a good idea to add some lights as well. So kind of the birch archways that we have been adding all over the place. On each side, the left and right side of the main pathway, we are going to have a car park on both sides. We want to have 2 of the birch archways. So if you find the center car parking space, that is the area that you are going to want to begin your 2 archways from. So the archways will start on the left and right side of behind of the car parking space, just extending out diagonally, and those 2 archways will branch out all the way over to the right, just next to the main pathway, and all the way over to the left where the actual fair boundary is itself. And they will stop in the same way that they kind of ended, just extending out diagonally from the back of the car parking spaces. Connect them all together at the top, place some lanterns underneath them, feel free to replace some of the links in the birch fence using birch fence gate, and it'll look really good. I have used a little bit of magic to remove all of the white concrete and copy one side of the car park over to the opposite side. And not only that, it is now time for us to start building some cars now that I have magicked away all of that and also magicked in the opposite side of the car park. So all of these cars are really easy to make. I am starting off with just a bunch of white cars because I can just world edit my way into some different colored cars. So I'm placing them kind of like in different-ish sort of positions, but some of them are also the same because it looks a little bit too weird. Like if you place things in such an abstract manner that it never makes sense, because sometimes cars would just line up together next to each other, you know? So they don't always have to be placed in like weird and different wonderful ways and also different from each other, because sometimes it is a little bit jarring. So anyway, the car itself does have its very own tutorial on the channel. It's really easy to make. It's a really quick build. You'll be able to find the tutorial for it down below in the description, and it's really easy to just change the different color of wool and carpet to suit your very own color scheme. So now that I've made a bunch of white cars, you can see me slowly turning them into different colored cars. So a couple of these will be white still, but all of these cars will well, the majority of these cars will get color changed, and it will I'll kind of keep it like a nice bright set of colourful cars. I'll also magic a set of cars over onto the opposite side and work on changing all of the colours of those. And once that has been complete, ladies and gentlemen, that's actually the entire last part of the fair. We have fully completed it. There's nothing else to do at this point except to enjoy it. And that concludes the longest project that has ever been built on this channel. Hopefully you have enjoyed every single step of the way, just as I have. If you have, please do remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell next to the subscription button. That'll ensure that you get all my videos sent directly to your sub box. And if you do feel as though that you are missing any part of the fair, then do refer back to the playlist. You guys know where it is. It's down below in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you yourself have an awesome fair / carnival / theme park, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.